Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm going to talk a little bit first about why darkness matters, some of our ongoing efforts to preserve dark skies in the region, and then some emerging issues. And some of those emerging issues, I think, are going to be completely new to at least some of you, those of you who I haven't ranted at before. But I think it'll be a little bit off, may seem out of left field from a wildlife conference, but I promise you it's very relevant. So here in West Texas, this is really a map of all of Texas, but here in West Texas, we still have some of the darkest skies in the country. So here looking at this map, we've got Dallas, we've got Houston, here's El Paso, Juarez, and the light from there. Down here is Big Bend National Park, where you can still go and see a pretty much pristine dark sky. Here we are in Alpine, McDonald Observatories are around there. It's still pretty dark. Of course, we have this big glow here, and that's the Permian Basin. So only a section of that is Midland, Odessa. The rest of it is oil and gas activity. So that's a big focus of mine, and I'll talk a little bit about that briefly. But I point this map out because, there's only this one little tiny corner of Texas left where we have the true dark sky experience. It's down here. And there are only 6 places left in the lower 48 that are as dark as that. And these little pockets of darkness are getting smaller every year. On average, light pollution or sky glow grows by about 8 to 10% per year. That's been the pace for the past decade. So it's getting really tough to find truly dark places. This matters for a few reasons. It matters for astronomers like myself. Big observatories, of course. Our entire our field depends on seeing stars. If we can't see them, we can't study them. Pretty straightforward. But there's a lot of other topics this overlaps with. Human health implications. We evolved under a cycle of day and night. If we don't have a regular day-night cycle, our circadian rhythm is disrupted, and so there's human health impacts to being around too much light at night. There's tourism and economic impacts. It's a big deal here. It's about 2/3 of all of the visitors to Brewster County participate in a stargazing experience during their trip. So it's not just a economic driver of the region, it's one of the leading economic drivers of the Big Bend area these days. Culture and history, astronomy is the oldest science. Ever since people have had eyes to look up with, we've been connecting with and trying to understand the sky in some way. And that, I think, has played a big role in throughout human history. And really only in the last 100 years or so have we kind of been losing our connection with the night sky, the average person's understanding of the sky. And of course, those wildlife implications, quite a lot of them. And this is actually a really rapidly growing field, especially in the last 10, 15 years. We've really learned a lot about how light impacts, life in general. But as I mentioned, all life on Earth really evolved under a day and night cycle. That's been the case on Earth for pretty much the entire Earth's history. And so only recently can we say that night has not necessarily been dark for some areas. So there's circadian disruptions that can impact the internal clocks, daily, even seasonal rhythms of most animals and plants. It's pretty broad-reaching effects. There's sensory and orientation interferences. So, for example, migratory birds, some of them use the night sky to navigate and are drawn off course by bright light sources. You may have seen moths circling around a light source. They're not circling because they're attracted to light usually. It's more accurate to say they're trapped by the light because they interpret a bright light source as being something in the sky. And if they're not under that thing, that means they're upside down. So they turn around to circle under the source. That can definitely be fatal to many insects, even if there's nothing immediately eating them or anything. They can exhaust themselves under light sources. So there's sensory and orientation interferences, prey-predator dynamics. So mule deer, for example, sometimes will congregate around more illuminated areas, more populated areas, sort of at night to shelter themselves from predators who may use darkness to their advantage. So, for example, mountain lions, the darkness is kind of their habitat. They perform better, they do better in darker areas. And so when there are illuminated areas, that usually puts them at a slight disadvantage. And sometimes even if you have, let's say a continually lit corridor, maybe there's not a physical barrier that's just lit, that can be enough to alter their movement and cause them to avoid that area, leading to habitat fragmentation. Temporal shifts, another example. So some species are more active at night or under certain conditions. Like for example, some species are more active on a moonlit night than a non-moonlit night. Prairie rattlesnakes are more active when there's no moon, as it turns out. So these are just a few examples, but I mean, there's a bajillion, right? I mean, all life on Earth evolved under this day-night cycle. So you name a species, I can find a way light impacts it, right? It may not be immediately fatal to it. It may not immediately alter it, but it has an impact, and these stack, right? It has the power to alter an entire ecosystem. So with that in mind, how do we fix it, right? That's what I like to talk about. How do we fix things? Well, we work closely with biologists, and we work with many folks to come up with solutions, specific to your use case for lighting. That doesn't just say, we don't just say turn lights off, right? If living in darkness is not a solution. Instead, there's a few basic steps, and we could tailor them if there's a particular endangered species of concern or particular work site or something. But basically, they all follow these principles. You shield the light, you target the light only to the area you actually need. You shouldn't see the light source from above or off the property. You can only see the source of light in the area that's intended to be lit. Intensity, a low level. Basically, don't light more than you need for the given task. A lot of people think more light equals more visibility. It's actually not quite how our eyes work, especially in a dark environment. If you light beyond a certain threshold, your eye is going to adjust to the brightness of that source, and everything around you will look too dark. So it's actually safer sometimes to have a little bit less light than you would expect, and allow your eye to do the lifting than super brightly illuminating one thing and having everything else appear dark. Most like job site safety issues where lighting is an issue, the incidents occur when you're going between a brightly lit area and a dimly lit area. So smoothing out that transition zone usually improves safety. Color temperature. The more like daylight the light source is, the more typically the more impact it has on the environment, on science, on human health, etc. So using a more amber tone doesn't scatter as much, more resembles sunset, doesn't have quite as much environmental impact. And then the last thing, if you don't need light, turn it off. So we work a lot with the oil and gas industry on some of these solutions. Here's an example from Devon Energy. We found it can reduce operating costs, improve energy efficiency, and improve safety and visibility. So it's a win-win solution. And we've been doing some great work there. It's just a scale problem. It's just a matter of, like, at this point in my mind, the problem on paper is solved. Like, we know how to do it. It's just a matter of doing it and scaling it up. Here's some other local examples. This is Village Farms in Marfa, where they're loading bays. We work a lot with local communities. Here's the Alpine Public Library, another good example of a sign. Right now, as we speak, Alpine ISD is modifying the stadium lights at Coconut Field. You can see it out the window to go out there to be dark sky compliant. So if dark sky, even stadiums can. It's not amber, it's still white in that case, because for the use case. But yeah, even big stadiums. So this is kind of my focus area. By state law, there are roughly there are 7 counties, not roughly 7 counties. There are 7 counties that have lighting ordinances in place to protect dark skies. They're kind of unique in Texas. And then with a subset of this, there are 3 counties, a little sliver of Balmorhea, and then 3 protected lands across the river in Mexico that have measures to preserve dark skies. So this was an honorary title that was designated in 2022, and a lot of people ask, well, what about the border wall? How's that going to impact things? Well, it will. I think we've had an ongoing dialogue with CBP, well, maybe dialogue isn't quite the right word. We've communicated with them, but we don't always hear exactly what they're doing, but we do have a few statements from them. Most of the lighting will not be visible. It'll be infrared in rural areas. So that's a big win. It's a good thing. What lighting would be visible is most likely going to be installed in or around Presidio, but will be a shielded design. That's what we've been told. Again, plans change. I'm not going to be completely sure about anything until it's installed. That's what we've been told. What's more of a wild card is construction and related support lighting. man camps, lay down yards, stuff like that. Those, however, would be subject to county ordinances if they're on private land. Now, if they're within the national park, within state land, then not necessarily. But if it's in Reeves County, Brewster County, Jeff Davis County, Hudspeth County, those facilities will have to comply with the lighting regulations that are in those counties. Another emerging issue is commercial space activity. And in fact, this is such a big issue, I've shifted my entire focus in the last few months to purely this issue. So unfortunately, I've had to put all the oil and gas work on pause. There are currently about 15,500 active satellites, and there are plans for 1.7 million more in the coming years. So very quickly, the sky could be completely dominated by satellites. There's one in particular, one proposal which is imminent, that is particularly concerning, and that's orbital reflectors. There are a few different kinds of these proposals, but the one that's closest to reality is a company called Reflect Orbital. And the idea is to launch large mirrors into the sky to intentionally reflect light onto Earth's surface at night for purposes such as generating solar power at night, construction site work, search and rescue operations. They even advertise streetlight replacement or events or special experiences. They have a plan to launch their first satellite likely next month, and they want 50,000 by 2035. They don't have regulatory approval yet there, but there really are no rules on this. It's like the border wall where laws were waived to make way for this. Really, there was nothing waived. It was just there's no regulation. But the laws never existed. Here's a piece from themselves that's sort of outlining how this is going to appear in the sky. It's basically a beam. It's not a spherical mirror or a curved mirror. It's a flat mirror. So it's kind of like glinting the light back down on Earth. If you're in the spot that's being reflected on, and you look up at the satellite, it'll be about 2 to 3 times the brightness of the full moon. It's pretty bright. And if you're far away, this dot in the sky would appear about as bright as Venus or so. So that's what, for most people, they would look like. And this is kind of an idea of the scattered light you would see from about 30 kilometers away. So you would see this from a huge area. So this is a simulation looking at what happens if they launch more of these. But the first one's coming next month. And it's a big issue because for astronomy, if you look up at this in the night sky with a telescope, you go blind. It's a reflection of the sun. So it will cause permanent eye damage if you are looking through optics, even potentially binoculars, and you see this satellite in the sky and you're unlucky, you can cause eye damage. So we have to restructure our entire programs around this. And unfortunately, I think most state parks, national park, other programs will have to do the same. When this first prototype is in the sky, we'll have to basically retrain staff around for its safety. But what happens if they launch more? Well, I created this simulation not showing how bright they are, but simply what the sky will look like. This is not 50,000. I could only have the computing power for 6,000 of them, 6,350. And this is a simulation of what that will look like in the sky. Each one of these ranging in brightness from maybe Venus, Jupiter, to brighter than the moon. And it'll appear here in the morning. So a simulation from the European Southern Observatory just looked at, what's the total amount of scattered light that would generate in the sky? Basically, the darkest locations on Earth, so imagine this is Big Bend, would be about as bright as a suburban location now. So this would be for the entire world. So it's a big issue. Now that this company is not alone, there are other similar proposals for similar things, and there's really no regulation on it. But we are at the precipice of losing the entire night sky for the entire world most of the time, if not all of the time, which is a really existential crisis for astronomy and wildlife too. Like, this is going to have some pretty severe impacts for wildlife that we haven't really studied, but it's certainly something that warrants attention. So we're working with like Cornell Lab of Ornithology and others to potentially study some of these effects of radar surveys once the prototype launches next month. But it's something that really demands more attention, quite frankly. So thank you so much. I'm sure there's a bajillion questions. I'll be around at the break as well if we don't have time.
Satellites up and what their potential timeframes might be?
So Reflect Orbital is the furthest along because their satellite is the simplest design. So that's why they'll start in next month or within a year. I know of at least 4 or 5 other space-based solar power companies, and then there's data centers in space being proposed as well. There's probably 10 of those at least. Not all of them can probably happen. I think there's a race to get their foot in the door to get FCC approval for their spectrum license, which is critical. And once you have that, well, it kind of shuts the door on your competitors. So we're seeing a huge race, and how many of them will actually make it across the finish line, it remains to be seen. But there's a lot. It's a really hot area. All right. Thank you so much.